Hi, welcome to Buffzone. My name is Kyle Ringo. This is Ryan Thorburn. We cover the University of Colorado Athletic Department for the Daily Camera newspaper. Ryan, the Buffs got a little bit of exciting news this week. On Tuesday morning, the National Football Foundation announced that a former Buff was elected to the College Football Hall of Fame. It wasn't Joe Garton, a guard on the 1990 National Championship team, and it wasn't former coach Bill McCartney. They were both on the ballot this year. A Veterans Committee selected former Buff John Wooten, an offensive lineman here in the late 1950s. What was your reaction to that news?
Well, I think it just adds to CU's great legacy of tradition in college football. A lot of younger kids that haven't been around quite as long as us, and certainly the older generations, don't know how good CU football has been over the years. They just look at the Dan Hawkins era in recent times, but CU has a great tradition. They have a number of guys in the College Hall of Fame. I think eventually Bill McCartney will get in there, but I don't know John Wooten personally, but I've done stories on, for example, the 1961 great Buffs team, and I know Buffalo Bill Harris and a lot of the black players and white players too were greatly influenced by him. And to be one of these Jackie Robinson type guys that breaks the color barrier in certain sports, it really helps to be a great player. And obviously he was a great player and a great story, so good for him.
Yeah, I didn't mention that he was the Buffs' second African American player in history, and he was sort of a guy, you know, who set a standard for Buffs of the future, and a guy who is looked to as, you know, kind of the standard bearer for the early days of the program, or you know, the 1950s, 1960s. You brought up a good point about you know, a guy who didn't make it this year, and we should point out that the National Football Foundation doesn't have a strict policy about this, but it's sort of an unwritten thing where they don't generally take two people from the same program in any given year. So maybe that's why Garton or Coach McCartney didn't also get in. But do you think Coach McCartney will eventually be in the Hall of Fame, and if so, why?
I think he will, just because those that were alive at the time know how great it was, and I think history shows with some of the ups and downs of the program just how special it was, and it may never ever get back to that level where you're talking about top 5 teams every year for 4 or 5 years, top 5 recruiting classes. And you know, in today's day and age, Bill McCartney would never get so many years of building it the right way and losing seasons and get to that point. So it's kind of a neat throwback era, even though it was still somewhat recent, and we know a lot of the players are still in the area and still around the program. So I think history will look back at that as maybe the best era in CU history, obviously the only national championship, and I think eventually Bill McCartney will get in as one of the great football coaches in college football history.
Yeah, I was talking with Bill earlier today, actually, and we were just talking about some of the players that played for him and some of the games he coached in, and one of the last things he said to me before we got off the phone is, you know, in relation to the Hall of Fame, he said, if the call ever comes, it'll be sweet. If it doesn't, it won't be bitter. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of sums up the way he feels about it, and that's sort of the perfect attitude to have about it. And I also talked to Joe Garton earlier in the week, and he has a very similar attitude about it. So I do believe that both of those guys will get in. Coach McCartney, you know, won a national championship here. He recruited a Heisman Trophy winner. You know, he did a lot of sort of unprecedented things for the program, and so I do think he'll eventually get in. Come back next week, and we'll talk, what, maybe some basketball, maybe some football, maybe both, maybe something else.
Let's figure something out.